I'm Michiel. I'm a colleague of Timothy at Sapience. I'm here to introduce the speakers and to welcome you. So welcome to this webinar on influencer marketing, where we focus on selecting and measuring the impact of influencers to gain the maximum effectivity of your influencer marketing campaigns. To introduce Axel. Axel is the co-founder of Adshot, an influencer marketing agency from Belgium, working for top brands like Proximus, Dela, Bpost, Pizza Hut, and many others. So welcome, Axel, and very looking forward to hosting this webinar together with you. We also have Timothy. Timothy is a co-founder of Sapience. He's also a marketing professor at the VUB, the Free University of Brussels in Belgium. And Sapience is a market research agency for B2B and B2C research, really focusing on human behavior, on understanding it and influencing human behavior. And it sounded like a great idea to really put these two perspectives together, to have really best practices on influencer marketing from the side of Adshot, but also some research-based opportunities from the side of Sapience. So in this webinar, which will last around 45 minutes, we hope to bring everything together. The two presenters will kind of intertwine. If you go a bit further, Axel, we will have the overview of the session. So we will start with an introduction of a recent influencer marketing case that Adshot has done for Proximus, to really give you an overview of the typical process and the results of an influencer marketing case. Then we focus on how to select the right influencers for your brand, where Adshot will focus on some best practices and Sapience on the research perspective, and then moving on to an evaluation of the impact of influencers with the same setup. The total webinar will last around 45 minutes. We will reserve some time for Q&A after both presenters do their work. So if you have questions in the meantime, you can ask them through the question section on the right-hand side. So you're seeing the chat. There's also a question tab where you can add all your questions. I will kind of moderate the questions and afterwards, so don't hesitate to add them during the webinar. Without further ado, I will gladly give the floor to Axel, who will kick it off with the recent influencer marketing case.
Yeah, sure. If I can go back one bit, because I wanted to mention just one thing about our agency, because it's important also for how we approach the two things that we're going to talk about, like one, identifying the right influencers, and two, assessing the performance of influencer marketing campaigns. You will see in the slides that I'm going to present as well that we have our own software tool that we've been developing since 2017. And we actually use that software combined with our own expertise, of course, to find the right influencers and also assess campaign performance. I just wanted to quickly note that, because otherwise you will see some software examples and might not really know what they're coming from. So without further ado, and Timothy wanted to say something extra about Sapience, but otherwise I'll kick off the case.
No, go ahead.
All right, perfect. Again, when we're talking about influencer marketing, many people still have the image of that's the traditional Instagram marketing campaign, and where somebody creates a post about a product or a brand, and that's it. What we basically always try to do is also work on different channels like TikTok and Twitch. Twitch is, for example, a live streaming platform. I'm going to quickly explain it because I know not everybody will know it, although it has 1.5 million active users in Belgium. It's actually the live television for many youths in Belgium as well. And it's basically what we're doing right now. We're on a live stream, mostly about gaming. It's mostly about gaming. And people watch it and can interact like you're doing in the chat. And it's a really interactive experience. So what we did for the Proximus Fiber Hyperrun, Proximus wanted to really emphasize fiber, as it is a solution, internet solution that provides a lot of speed. And of course, who finds internet connection, low latency and stuff relevant are gamers. So they wanted to really reach out via influencer marketing to gamers in an interactive way, which made them stand out of the competition. So that's why we created the Proximus Fiber Hyperrun. The Proximus Fiber Hyperrun is actually a map, a custom-made map in a game called Fortnite, which I think has around 400 million users worldwide. So it was a thankful game to work with. What we actually did is create a branded Fortnite map from Proximus in a futuristic world on Fortnite. And we first let live streamers organize a speedrun in that map. So speedrun is that they have to finish the whole map as quickly as possible. And as you can see, there will be better images here as well, but it contains a lot of Proximus branding as well. And it emphasizes the aspect of speed because it was a speedrun. And so TikToks were created and live streams were done to really create awareness about the competition. And there, as the last part, there was a website where people could actually, you can on Fortnite just easily create an account or log into your existing account. And then you could enter a custom code to go directly to the map of Proximus and participate in Fiber Run or the Fiber Hyperrun. And then after you finished, you could measure your time and put it into in the high score section of a dedicated website that was created for this. You could win amazing prizes such as the PlayStation and so on. So again, here we really try to make things as fun, interactive, or interesting as possible via influencer marketing campaigns, and adding this interactive layer, for example, of a game will also yield more metrics that we can use to assess campaign performance, which I will discuss, of course, in that section. So voila, the first part is, of course, how do we identify the right influencers? Well, basically, you can, of course, go to the social media and just start browsing, but I don't think that's an efficient solution. So we have what we call influencer discovery tools. I listed a few here. I think these are two local ones. It has some advantages. Of course, what they do is they kind of pull data from all social networks and put them social media networks and actually put them into a database that you can easily filter and get some extra data touch points per profile to determine whether or not they're a good fit. The downside is that it can become a bit expensive to use. I see that Timothy has left the building, but no worries. I think he will be back on time. And also, what is really important to stress out here is that these tools also scrape data. So most of the time, they're making estimations on data, for example, about the audience, but they don't really have the specific data of the audience of an influencer. So an estimate is just an estimate. It might be good, but it can also be completely wrong. And it can also become, for some tools, quite expensive to use. Like, again, Adshot, we have our own database. We have our own platform where influencers can register, where we get first-party data because they authenticate their channels. And this makes it for us easy as well to use certain data. Welcome back, Timothy. I think you were gone for a few brief seconds. And still a bit lagging if I can see it correctly. But okay, I'll continue, no worries. And another thing that you can do is you can use certain hashtags. For example, I'll show an example in the next slide, or some tools like Twitter, they have advanced search options where you can just put in certain keywords and put in a certain time. Let's say you're doing something for Pizza Hut, you can see who in Belgium is creating a tweet about pizza, and some of these people and how many followers they should have. And some of these people, of course, might have other interesting social media channels, and it's also a good way to determine or find actually influencers. And the last one is, of course, we also have a website with reference cases. Many other marketing or influencer marketing websites have reference cases. We always list who we work with. So it might be interesting to see a bit like who is working on what campaigns and stuff like that. So how to find the right influencers? Again, this is a hashtag example. Imagine that this is on TikTok, but imagine that you're doing a similar service like bpost. I would not use hashtags of competitors because, of course, you don't want to work with an influencer who has recently done something for a competitor. But on the other hand, if you are a food company and you're looking to check out other food companies as well, what they're doing, who might not be direct competition, you can see a bit on a hashtag who is all creating content about a certain topic. It's a campaign that we're doing right now, bpost. I already see some creators that we're working with also in this list. And just something that's not really has to do anything directly with finding the right influencers, but just bear in mind as a brand that 40% of young people, when they're looking for extra information, for example, about a place to lunch, they will first go to TikTok or Instagram and use that search bar rather than the traditional Google search engine. And this comes from a Google senior vice president. So just something to bear in mind. So, of course, finding right influencers can be via discovery tools and stuff like that. Also like hashtags that I just explained. But, of course, it's also equally important that you have a list of potential influencers, but how to actually find the right ones. In influencer marketing terms, we call it vetting the right influencers. Of course, the low-hanging fruit is to check out their content. Although it often gets forgotten that marketeers focus a bit too much on metrics. But of course, the main and most important thing is their content and what they're doing on social media, and whether or not it resonates with the brand or with the campaign you're looking to apply in the near future. Also, of course, audience. You can see via as well discovery tools, most discovery tools, as well as via our own tool. So when we're using Adshot, our own tool, each creator that creates an account creates this kind of page, which is a kind of a resume where we got a lot of data about their previous collaborations, about their audience, certain tags, of course, the content, which was the favorite content, some extra analytics, and of course, you have even more metrics, but these are like the more public ones. So you can all use that data as well. For audience, we often see that it's quite important, especially when we're working with French-speaking influencers. They have sometimes a huge audience as well in France. If you're on TikTok or if you're looking to do influencer marketing on TikTok or on Instagram, there are solutions for that you can actually boost the content of the influencer more to a Belgian French-speaking audience. So I would not use that as a hard criteria not to actually work with somebody. Again, previous collaborations, if they just work with a competitor, you shouldn't maybe a month later involve them in an influencer marketing campaign. Also, an important one, which often gets overlooked, is their content specialty. For example, if you're looking to do a Reels campaign, so a video campaign on Instagram, and you're just screening the profiles, and you're not looking further how the Reels are doing, how the Reels are performing, and if they have any Reels, it might become a mismatch because they're not good into creating the content you're actually looking for, although the profile might be relevant. And of course, you have these typical metrics like how active are they still and what's the engagement rate. So just to give a bit of insights how we approach things, and I think it's also, of course, we're an agency. If you're going to do it directly, perfectly fine. You can take, I think, the same steps as listed here, but then because I know that this is sometimes a difficult process and people think, how are we actually going to do this? So basically, we have a kickoff call with a client. This could be if you're doing it directly, writing a mini influencer marketing plan where you say, okay, we're going to look for influencers on these channels for this kind of content. This will be a high-level creative that we're looking for. Never be too specific because the influencer needs to give input on what you're actually looking to do. And of course, what kind of influencers are we looking for? Typically, as in many marketing things, you work with persona to kind of get a grasp of what a good influencer would look like for your campaign. Then we're going to onboard influencers. We use Adshot, our own tool, as well as external discovery tools. We often combine them to get a lot of data, basically what we've discussed in the previous slide, and see which ones are matching. For example, we can also use Adshot to type in certain keywords, and it automatically look at all the content they created. And if, for example, Pizza Hut, and they create a video of pizza or something like that, then they always pop up and there will be a relevant match. So we actually also use hard data to find them. But then, and this is an important one, you're working with people and not everything translates into hard data. We always ask apply questions. So basically what happens is we invite influencers via Adshot, via our campaign tool. They can, people who are registered receive a notification that there is a campaign, and then they can apply for the campaign if they're interested or decline if not interested. And of course, here we can ask extra questions that provide insights that we would normally not have, like, why are you an ideal fit for a brand? It can be, for example, that they're already a user of that brand. And of course, it makes it an ideal fit and a really credible fit. But these are, of course, things you have to ask before you can actually know them. There's nowhere in any database that kind of information. And then, of course, you will make a selection based on, of course, this data and these answers to this question. So, Timothy, I'm going to leave the floor to you to do a bit research-based analysis about this topic.
Yes, indeed, Axel. Thank you very much. And indeed, at Sapience, we are looking at the vetting process and the selection of the right influencer based on research. And it's very important to do the right type of research because the traditional methods are not always well suited to vet, to select the right influencer. And it's really important because sometimes it seems very easy. Like the prototypical example of an influencer campaign is, of course, on the left, George Clooney for the brand, Axel, you know it?
Yeah, sure.
Nespresso. Everybody knows it. So also in my classroom, if I ask 200 students, they all say together, the 200, no, it's Nespresso. So it seems like a very easy thing to do. You take a very famous person, you link that person to your brand, and voila, you have influencer marketing. Now, a lot of companies have imitated that and have noticed that it's not that easy as it seems. For instance, Shakira, when we ask people, what do you find about the fact that Shakira is an influencer for Colgate? Most people say, yes, very, very good. She fits very well. She has a broad smile. Unfortunately, nobody notices that she's not an influencer for Colgate, but she's actually an influencer for Oral-B. And so you see, they see Shakira and they don't even know the brand she's linked to. That's not going to happen with George Clooney and Nespresso. So in a lot of cases, it doesn't go that well. And in a very recent case, a Belgian brand, AB InBev, it has gone seriously wrong. And Bud Light has worked with a transgender influencer, Dylan Mulvaney, but forgot that the fit with their original audience is completely wrong. So Budweiser originates from the Midwest, from Missouri and the US. And so they didn't realize that the fit of this specific influencer was completely in contrast with the current users. And so now there are estimates that this could cost billions of dollars for AB InBev. So it's very important to select the right influencer. And you cannot only work with popularity. You cannot only work with people who are simply famous. And that you can see on the next slide, Axel. So you basically need two elements. Your influencer, just like all other brand assets, when you want to build a brand, you have a lot of brand assets that support your brand, the value of your brand. And the influencer is just another type of brand asset. And this brand asset needs to be popular, needs to be famous. So that's okay for Shakira, that's okay for George Clooney. But it also has to be uniquely linked to your brand. There shouldn't be a link with another brand, or there shouldn't be too many links with other products or services. And some companies like Coca-Cola are very good at that, at creating brand assets that are uniquely linked to them. On the top right, you see an image. Do you know which brand it is, Axel?
The top right.
The lid.
Yeah, not really. No. Should I know?
I don't know if people in the chat know it, but normally a lot of people notice that it's Nutella. Right? And so simply showing the lid of Nutella, people already think of Nutella. So it's uniquely linked. But the main message is that you should find out who is popular, who is famous as an influencer, but also, do they fit my brand? And do they uniquely fit my brand? And next slide, Axel. That's difficult to do with a typical survey, because in a typical survey, if you ask questions about influencers, all the answers will be influenced mainly by how famous, how popular the influencer is, and not by the uniqueness and the strength of the associations. And here, this is just one case. We are working with reaction time tasks. So people have to react to influencers and to specific associations and brands. And based on the reaction time, based on how fast they react, we can determine whether there is a strong association between an influencer and a brand, and whether that association is unique. The more unique it is, the faster people can react. And recently, next slide, Axel. Recently, we did a huge study in the US for a very famous headphone brand. that wanted to strengthen their brand values through a partnership with an influencer. So what they noticed was that they were seen as a very reliable, very high quality brand, but that young people didn't think the brand was for them because it wasn't cool enough. And so they wanted an influencer that was cool, that was popular amongst the young people, but at the same time reflected the strong brand values of the brand. And so here we did a reaction time task where people saw all kinds of influencers. We basically had a short list of 20 possible influencers, very famous American artists. And then we showed them specific values, brand values related to that brand. And then people simply had to swipe left or right. Does the brand value fit with the influencer? And so that way, on the next slide, that way we were able to make a short list and reduce the 20 artists to 9 potential artists that were both famous, that were both popular amongst young people, and also amongst the traditional audience of the brand, and at the same time had a high unique fit with the brand. And so we were able to reduce these 20 artists to 9 artists. And then we looked at those 9 artists into detail on the next slide. And we saw that one artist, the artist that you can see in the bold line, was actually outside of the other 9, outside of the pack, and really had very strong associations with 5, 6 very strong and unique values related to the brand. And so that way we were able to select one specific artist, of which we know this person is famous, is popular on one hand, and also has a very unique fit with the brand values of the brand we're talking about. And today, or maybe on the next slide, the conclusion is that this brand is now actually negotiating with this influencer, with this one specific influencer, based on the overall popularity that we measured in the traditional way using a typical survey, but mainly on the fact that this influencer is uniquely fit to represent the brand. And this was done in a more innovative, a more creative way using reaction time tasks.
All right.
So this is just one example of how we research-based vet a specific artist and make sure he or she fits with the brand.
All right. On to the second part of the, let's say, influencer marketing thing is our campaign is like, how do we evaluate the impact? So again, you found the right influencers and you used the tools that either me or Timothy discussed or the methodology, let's say. But how do you actually assess the impact of a campaign? So a common mistake or common, how do I say it, perspective that lives amongst marketing people is that influencer marketing is a sales channel. Influencer marketing is a marketing channel primarily, but it's not a direct sales channel. So you shouldn't, the message that I want to say is you shouldn't only assess influencer marketing based on the amount of sales you generated. That's what salespeople are for, or other things are for, of course. But the strength of influencer marketing is that it has the potential to score amongst all touch points of the customer journey. To make this a bit easier, Avinash Kauchik has done this, has created a framework and it's see, think, do, care. So people have to see your product, consider your product, take action, mostly buy your product then, and of course they will become a loyal customer. And influencer marketing has the opportunities, and you can use KPIs to determine how effective an influencer marketing campaign is across all these touch points. So I'm just going to give some examples on how, let's say you're doing an awareness campaign. We did something for Dela. Dela is a funeral insurance service, let's say. So not the most easiest topic, but we made really cool videos about it, which was more about celebrating life and memories rather than talking about death. But again, it was a bit more an awareness campaign for Dela. So how did we assess it, for example, is do we see a bump in web searches when it comes to Dela? You can use Google Trends or Google Keywords Planner, for example, to determine this. Did we receive, or did Dela or any other client or yourself receive a spike in website visitors? Marco, I can share the reference case after with you. It's also on the website if you want to, but it's not a playable video, it's an image. Also, of course, and this is a really well-established KPI/metric for an awareness campaign, is how many impressions were on the content or how many video plays were there. Of course, you have many kind of metrics related to that, how many video completions and stuff like that. But the one we mostly focus on is the 6-second focused video plays, especially on TikTok, which means how many people watched your video for at least 6 seconds or took action in the meantime in these seconds, like liked the video, commented, shared it, or if it was made clickable via what I earlier discussed via Instagram, or you can boost the content and make it clickable. If they click to the website, of course, that also counts as a 6-second focused video play. Again, we see that the attention span is shortening, especially also on video content, because you can easily swipe it away, even more so on TikTok, but also on Instagram Reels. So always try to convey your message in the first 6 seconds. It's nothing to do with, of course, with the KPIs or the assessment of a campaign. But of course, if you haven't included your message or your brand in the first 6 seconds, in some way, how valuable is a 6-second focused video play? Not really that valuable, I think. Of course, then think how you can go for more, like not awareness, but actually drive consideration, have people to consider your brand or being a step further in the customer journey, let's say, towards conversion. We use metrics like, of course, the famous ones, like, comment, shares, how much interaction was driven. Another weird one, which is actually hard to measure, is dark social. What we often see, especially on TikTok, you can see it here in really small detail on this example as well. Many people save the video or share it via other platforms or direct messaging channels with other people. So here you can see that also people are actually, especially because this was a video for a high school, but it was really funny. So they shared it probably. It happened 428 times. They shared it with other people to of course, because it was funny or because it was relevant to them. Again, this is also a bigger KPI than just awareness, because it's even sharing and showing more interest in the topic that was at hand of the branded content. Of course, clicks is also one. How, if you can make it clickable, the content via ads, how many times it was clicked, how many new followers did your brand get on social media. Often we also use influencer marketing, not to post on the influencers content channel directly, but we use that content to post. For instance, in the Viva's high school case was the case as well, that they recorded a video, but it was actually posted on the Viva's TikTok channel, and we see that there was a huge growth in their follower base on TikTok due to that fact. So it's also an important metric to take into account. Then, of course, mentions on social media, and how many times was your brand mentioned or a hashtag used. Especially on TikTok, you can do things with hashtags that people can also easily create videos with the same hashtag. It can have like a spin-off effect, and you can also see how many times your hashtag was used, for example. And if you use things like the Proximus Fiber Hyper Run, or you can do giveaways, like in this case, where people have to take certain actions actually to participate in the giveaway, you can actually have deeper metrics that you wouldn't otherwise have. I will show the Proximus example at the end of the slides. Or you can also, if you adapt a filter, for example, on Instagram or on TikTok, you can also see how many people tried that filter. I have a Lancome example where you actually could use a makeup filter and see which makeup suited you best. Many people try that filter themselves to determine which one was the right product. This is, of course, the ideal methodology of what consideration is. The do phase, so buying things, I think it speaks a bit for itself. Influencer marketing can be directly attributable, so you can just, or non-directly attributable, so you can see a spike in conversions without actually being able to fully determine that it was due to the influencer marketing campaign. But of course, if a content was released at a certain date and you see a spike in conversions, you know that probably it has to do with the influencer marketing campaign. But you can also use UTM tags, traditional digital marketing things that you tag your hyperlink and that your analytics system can pick it up. You can work with discount codes like in the example right here. Or you can also create an affiliate page for an influencer where people can buy your product via that page. So then you actually know which influencers drove which sales. So these are all cool things to implement if you really want to have a more granular view of the impact of your campaign per influencer. Also, not always, like I just said, it's to influencer marketing content is generated purely with the focus on sharing it on the influencer channel. There's also another option, for example, that they just create videos or pictures that you can use on your website, and then you can determine, has my conversion rate of that specific landing page, for example, has gone up prior and after we added these media assets of the influencers to the page. And then care, I'm going to quickly go over that, but of course you can also use influencer marketing for your current customers. For example, you can let an influencer make a sneak preview of a new product that you're offering or a new flavor that you're adding, for example. And this can be shared first with your own customers. And of course, you can see how many video plays it drove via a mail, for example, you sent with the video. These are also metrics to determine like the more care part of how you can leverage influencer marketing for existing customers. Then one final piece of advice before the reference case, and I'll show some example results, is you can always ask feedback of the influencer. It's the same again with selecting them. How can you identify them? Just ask them. It's also the same here. If you want to assess the impact of a campaign, just ask them as well. I remember we did a case also for Proximus, which was determined or was actually about finding talents, IT talents, to apply for jobs, IT jobs at Proximus. We couldn't technically measure it because due to the technical limitations, but we just asked the influencers who promoted it in fun ways for 3 months, and they knew in their community that people actually had applied for the job. So then it's not a hard metric, but then we can use that feedback as an extra, let's say, insight of how valuable the campaign was. Here for the Proximus Fiber Hyperhome, for example, just to give you some, here you also see a better example of the map with the branding and stuff like that. So here you see more awareness metrics, how many views has it driven, clicks. We also boosted certain TikToks that talked about this competition. And then because we boosted it, it becomes clickable, so we could measure clicks. And this is what I said earlier in the consideration or the think phase. We could also, because we created a custom map in Fortnite, we could also get extra metrics from that engagement metrics. So there were 34.7K unique players who played in that map, which is, in my opinion, an insane amount. And even more insane, I think, is that people who played the Fortnite Proximus map played on average 45 minutes. So for many marketeers, it's a wet dream, I think, if I can say so, like that people are in a branded environment for 45 minutes straight and engaging actually with your brand and having fun when your brand is all around. So I think that's also an important thing to determine, or these metrics are really important to consider when you're assessing the impact of a campaign. Timothy, over again to you.
Yes, thank you, Axel. Indeed, I think what we are doing from a research point of view to evaluate the effect of the influencer, I think it's very compatible to the elements that you mentioned. So you mentioned a number of very interesting hard metrics. When you have a social campaign, when you have a digital campaign, I'm going to focus a little bit more on other types of evaluation that you can extend to outside the digital world and into the real world. And basically, also there are a few new techniques, a few innovative techniques to make that evaluation more objective and more real. First of all, we have eye tracking, so we track the eyes of consumers, and we check whether marketing material featuring your influencer actually stands out or not. Second of all, we measure arousal, which is a kind of an indicator of engagement, what you already talked about, like an emotional level of engagement. Are you really interested in what the influencer has to say? And finally, we often use facial coding. So we let people watch marketing material featuring the influencer, and we code the emotions from the face. And I will go into detail on each of these. Eye tracking is very simple. You have an eye tracker, and you can actually see what people are looking at. These eye trackers are very light, so you can use them in the street, in the cinema, in real life situations, and see whether marketing material draws the attention or not. And today it's even possible. Maybe go back one. Today, yeah, today it's no problem. Today it's even possible to do eye tracking via the webcam. So even that makes it even more accessible. And so then the interesting, now you can go to the next slide, Axel. Interesting that what people say doesn't always correspond with what they actually watch. And here we have a typical example where you have two versions of the same campaign for Sunsilk. In one of the versions, the girl is looking at you at the top version. The bottom version, the girl is looking at the brand name Sunsilk. If you ask in a typical survey, if you ask what do you like most, people like the top version most because the girl is looking at you, and people like it more when people look back and are not looking away. But when we are actually measuring the eye movements, we see that we follow the gaze of the girl. And so it's actually more effective. The bottom version is more effective because it really leads you to watch the brand name. And next slide, Axel. One case, a current case that we did, and that really shows the value of eye tracking, is a case that we did for Zero Copy. Zero Copy is a Belgian startup. They make it affordable for students to study by allowing them to print their courses for free. So if you become a member of Zero Copy, you log into Zero Copy, you can load up your courses and you can print all these courses for free. The only, because students still like to study on paper and not on a computer screen. The only thing you have to agree with is that sometimes in your course there are small ads. Like in this example, you see a small banner ads on the bottom. Now, one of the claims of Zero Copy was, of course, to advertisers that it's very interesting. Why? It's not like a magazine where you flip through. You're actually studying the course. So you're actually spending a lot of time on one sheet of paper. And so the chance that you see the ad is much higher. And that has been their claim for the last 5 years. But we have actually tested it. And what we have done is we have compared Zero Copy ads with ads, exactly the same ads in a magazine. And indeed, what we showed was that 95% of the ads in the course were actually watched and watched for a long time, whereas ads in a typical magazine were only watched 60% of the time and not as long. And so, next slide. You can also apply this to your marketing material, including influencers. And this can be done even outside of the digital world, where the hard metrics that you talked about, Axel, are very interesting and are actually indicators of real behavior. So you cannot argue with that. But it's more difficult to have these hard metrics when we're talking about ads in paper magazines, in newspapers, on billboards outside. And here, eye tracking is ideally suited to see, does my influencer make my ads more attractive, attract more the attention of passers-by or of readers. So that's eye tracking. Now, next slide. Now, another very interesting measure is arousal. How engaged are people by your influencer? And again, here we can measure it using measures that go beyond the digital world. And here, for instance, we use skin conductance. So we put sensors on the hands of participants, and we can actually measure how engaged they are in your material. Basically, when you are very engaged in something, your hand palms start to sweat a little bit, and we can actually measure that effect. Here we actually apply it to influencer ads, typically TV spots or spots that you can show on YouTube or on social media. And this is a very interesting case, a case that we did on a Schweppes ad. And here you have a typical Schweppes ad with an influencer, and in this case it's a Penelope Cruz. They have used many influencers, but this ad was with Penelope Cruz. She enters a party and she sees a girl at a bar, and they exchange glances. Penelope Cruz is going closer to the girl, closer, until you think they are going to kiss. but of course she's just grabbing the Schweppes. So it's a typical Schweppes ad. And we used arousal, so the sensors on the hand palms, to measure the effect. And what we saw was indeed that the ad elicits a lot of arousal. And basically each time Penelope Cruz is shown in the ad, we see a big peak in arousal. Of course, Ali, I'm tricking you a little bit because this is the pattern of the men watching the ad.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
The next slide is showing the pattern of the women. And so what you see is that it's completely flat. And so very interesting to see, because Schweppes got a lot of good comments about the ads by men, and they thought they were doing a very good job, and everybody was congratulating them for working with Penelope Cruz and so on. But they didn't see their sales change. Their sales didn't go up, and they didn't understand why, because everybody said it was such a good ad, but it was mainly the men who came to them and said it was a good ad. And specifically, the ad was targeted at women. They wanted to show Penelope Cruz likes to drink Schweppes, so you as a woman should also like to drink Schweppes. But the women aren't interested, and so they don't show any arousal. And so you have a very good influencer, but for the wrong target audience. And by measuring the effective arousal elicited, you can actually show that, and you can explain why the sales didn't go up in this case. And then finally, we also use facial coding, also very interesting today, because you can, again, use sensors on the face to measure which emotions people have, not the level of the level of emotional engagement, but actually which emotions do you have? Do you have positive or negative emotions? So you can use sensors for that, but you can also today use the webcam for that. So you have more and more advanced software that allows to interpret the emotions on the face of people when they're watching specific items. And one case that we did, a rather famous case in Belgium, was we did facial coding for Quick. So Quick wanted to make a new hamburger, and they wanted to make the preferred hamburger of the Belgians. And so they wanted only to use ingredients that most Belgians become happy about. And so what we did on the next slide is we basically showed ingredients to people, and people were sitting in front of their laptop, and the only task they had to do was look at ingredients, and we measured their eye we measured their facial expression. And so sometimes we had ingredients that almost everybody liked, like tomatoes or cheese, and then sometimes we had ingredients that some people really liked, like sprouts or endives with loaf, which some people really liked, but a lot of people really hated. And we could actually see it on their faces without asking any questions. We didn't ask any questions. We just let them watch the ingredients. And then on the next slide, it's shown a bit how it's done. And so the webcam determines based on the eyes, the nose, the mouth, which emotions you have. And then on the next slide, we gave a list of the top 10 most liked ingredients to Quick, and they made a selection of that, and they made a new hamburger called the Préféré, so the most preferred hamburger of the Belgians. And this can also be applied to influencer marketing on the next slide. I'm pretty certain that if Budweiser had tested the influencer before and looked at the emotions, what they would have seen probably is that specific target audience, probably young women, maybe more left-leaning people, people who don't identify with traditional gender stereotypes, that they would actually very much like Dylan Mulvaney as an influencer, but they would also have discovered that the more typical audience of Budweiser from the Midwest in the US, probably they wouldn't state it in a survey because they would answer in a socially desirable way. They wouldn't have that strong an opinion in a typical traditional survey. But if you just had shown the picture, you probably would have seen on their face that they didn't like it at all. And so also in this case, I'm pretty certain that they didn't do it. And it's a case where they should have done it and where they probably wouldn't have made the 27 billion mistake.
Yeah, indeed. It would have been a positive return on investment if they did.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
All right, super interesting, Timothy, for that part as well. Really cool to see indeed how new tools or tools like innovative research is also helping, and especially like the last one is really strong. I think that they could have tested it, and I can completely agree with you as well. So to sum up, I can just go into do it in one sentence because we're already a few minutes over time before the Q&A. But again, influencer marketing is also a personal thing, so you can always just when you're selecting influencers and when you're assessing the campaign value, also ask feedback from the influencers themselves and not only rely on hard KPIs, but both are actually preferable. That was my short conclusion, hopefully.
Yes, for us, the main conclusion is that there are a lot of new innovative research techniques that can actually help you not only vetting, selecting the influencer, but also evaluating afterwards the effectiveness of that selection.
All right.
So I think, yeah.
Time for the Q&A. If there are any, I haven't opened the tab, so I'm curious if there are any questions.
I opened the question section. I don't see any questions yet.
No, voilà, me neither. Voilà. So if anybody has a question, feel free to still type them, be it for Timothy, be it for myself. Happy to take some time to answer them, of course. Or provide some feedback on the session if you want to. That's also perfectly fine, of course.
I see Marco is typing in the chat.
Yeah, I see somebody typing as well. So. Yeah. Is that one more for me or Timothy, or do you want to say something about it as well?
I think it's a bit more for you, Axel.
Yeah, sure. So you have indeed tools. Like I think if you think about quality of influencer followers, there's a lot of always discussion about bots and stuff like that. Sometimes they buy it themselves, but most of the time they get follow botted. So people just put bots in their name. You have like the discovery tools kind of check it. Again, it's always an estimate. And they can see like, okay, we think that 30% of these accounts are fake and 70% are real. But how do you measure the quality besides of the bots? Because that's a different topic, is just to determine the engagement rate, in my opinion. How close-knit is the community and how influential is an influencer over its community? I think it translates more in how much do they get likes, how much interaction is there on content or on a live stream with the influencer. I think this is really like the main number of main KPI number, let's say, to determine that fact. I hope that kind of answered your question. Super. And Marco is tipping, but it's a Marco with a C, so I think it might be a different question.
Yeah, I think so.
And Nicolas is typing as well. I see a question, I think.
Yeah, also in the question section.
Yeah. Again, how do you... I'll read it and then we can decide it, Timothy. How do you convince old-minded companies that an influencer with a medium community but the perfect target audience can have a value for them? You want to take it or should I?
Yeah, I think we can both take an angle, but in our case, with the headphone case that I showed you, we actually didn't take the influencer that had the highest popularity. So we didn't take the influencer that was known by most people, but we selected. Of course, there was a threshold. They have to be known by some people, of course, but we mainly looked at the fit with the target audience indeed, and with the fit with the brand. And so I think the big problem is that if you just focus on high community, then you're going to take influencers that don't have a clear image and that cannot uniquely be linked to your brand. And so for us, that's actually a very, very important element. We try to show it by doing the research, but of course, they in a way they also have to believe in it.
Yeah. Also, I think if I may add to that, many people think about influencer marketing solely in terms of reach. Because you mentioned medium community, so I think there's a reach aspect involved. I think it's also important to see, for example, let's say you want to create a video about your product, a creative video, then you have to hire a copywriter, a video production company, post editing company. So again, it's the alternative. If you want to have a cool video, for example, or a cool reels or short video about your product, an influencer does all these things at once and on top has a really good reach and good connection with a community. Also, the smaller the community, the more influential typically we see an influencer is, and the bigger it becomes the community. It's a little because it's hard to manage a huge community, of course. So I think that's how you convince them that it's not purely about reach, and that medium influencers might be the best combination of still reach, but still a heavy impact, let's say, of influence on their community. Voila, I hope that answered the question. Let me see, chat. It was an interesting webinar. Thank you. If we're talking about engagement rate, what would you say is an ideal engagement rate? Timothy, you or me?
I think this one is for you.
About sure. I'm just going. I thought so as well, but I just wanted to ask. There is no. To be honest, I just wrote a post 2 days ago or 3 days ago that averages or benchmarks of a social media channel are not really that relevant because there's too much benchmark it against your own performance. And if you have an engagement rate on your own social media post, for example, use that benchmark and kind of see how that ties up or compares to when you're working with influencers. Is the engagement rate way higher than the influencer is doing a good job, or the reach is better? There are many things, but of course there is no average engagement rate, not even of a social media channel, or not even maybe of what you can also do is use the average engagement rate of one influencer and see if your post, which is branded content mostly, has similar or slightly less probably, but slightly less is typically okay for a branded collab, of course, engagement rate. But if the engagement rate would be 3 on all his or her posts and it's for your branded collab, it was 0.05, then of course, it's not ideal, but there is no benchmark, let's say a God number benchmark that is out there to really assess effectivity. Thanks, Sander, and also thank you for your contribution to the hyper run with Mapshot. If I can give a shout out to another company. All right, I think we can conclude. I don't see any more questions.
Yes.
Timothy, thank you for also for me for the opportunity to talk together.
Thank you.
And some insights, and we'll also, I think, because you lost connection, not too sure there is a video on demand available, but hopefully there is.
Yes, indeed. I dropped out a few times, but fortunately not during my own sections.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Axel, for the co-presentation. And I think we will share the video online also.
Yeah, all right, perfect. I'll see you in the next, and thank you all, everybody, for your presence, of course. It's the most important. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you.